Today I'm going to take a look at a handheld dynamic microphone from SE Electronics. Now they tell us it's optimized for instruments, but it gets a lot of use on vocals as well. So let's just see how it works on both. Now you hear a lot of discussion about this being SE Electronics' answer to the Shure SM57, and that's a lot to say in terms of the versatility we're going to expect here. And of course we will compare it to the 57 in this review. But for now, keep an eye on the lower thirds. All of the audio in this review is going to be recorded without processing using the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6. I've chosen that because I think it's fairly representative of what a lot of people have for recording, especially in a home environment. But we will do some tests with another preamp later on just to see if that makes a big difference. And I also recommend wearing a good set of headphones while listening to the review. It'll give you a better idea of what's going on in the audio test, plus you'll be able to hear the differences in the microphone comparisons. Now I want to get started by talking about working distance with this microphone, and right now I have it set at about 6 inches away from my mouth, off axis slightly. That's to help out with plosives. People, because. And you can hear it definitely picked those up. Now remember, SE designed this as an instrument microphone, so if you want to use this with vocals, you're going to need to use either like a foam pop filter or even a screen in front of it. Now, it's also fairly sensitive to distance and proximity. I have the gain here set at 2 o'clock because the signal's pretty hot from this microphone at this distance. As I get closer, you'll definitely hear the proximity effect engage, but it's also quite easy to overdrive the preamp because of how hot the signal is. The microphone will accept a high sound pressure level. We just got to make sure that we have our gain set appropriately. Now, I'm also going to go ahead and back up to a foot away and about 18 inches away so you can hear the pickup. And of course I've adjusted the microphone so it's pointing directly at me again, and this is 1 foot away without adjusting the gain. This is the amount of signal we're getting. And back up a little more. I'm probably around 18 inches away now. I'm looking at my monitoring and it's dropped considerably here, and that's to be expected again with a dynamic microphone. Now, we don't normally think of dynamic microphones as being very detailed microphones. So when we need to make recordings of instruments that have a lot of granularity, quite often we'll use a condenser microphone in the studio. But of course, in a live environment, that's not always practical, and so we'll go for a dynamic. And because this is an alternative to the 57, a mic that gets a lot of use for that, I want to test it out with the shaker and the kibasa. Okay, let's hear the kibasa. Okay, and my take from the monitoring there is that this does not have the granularity of a condenser microphone, but it's likely going to be okay for a live environment, and that's really what we're talking about here. Now, I have a few microphone comparisons for you, and I wanted to start it with something that was a very affordable option. So we have the Behringer BA85A. It's a handheld dynamic microphone. It has a floating mount on the capsule inside. It's about a quarter of the price of the V7X. I'm switching back and forth between the two of them. I will say the V7X has a lot hotter signal, gains at around 2 on it versus 3 for the Behringer. But beyond that, what do you think of the sound, one versus the other? And of course, now that you've heard me on both microphones, which one are you listening to now? Is it the V7X or is it the BA85A? Check that top corner to find out. And because the V7X is an instrument microphone, you know we're going to have head-to-head comparison against the Shure SM57. So here we go. Both of these microphones, of course, are connected to the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6, but I had to put the gain at 330 on the 57 versus 2 o'clock on the V7X. So again, it's a lot hotter microphone than many of the other ones. But moving back and forth between the tone, can you tell the difference? Is one more pleasing to you than the other? And now that you've had a chance to hear me on both microphones, which one am I speaking on now? Is it the Shure SM57 or the SE V7X? Check that top corner to find out. And I wanted to include 2 comparisons against small diaphragm condenser microphones as well. So here I have the Audio-Technica AT2021. Again, for instrument recordings, these are both going to be options. Sometimes you need to have one that doesn't pick up as much bleed. Sometimes that doesn't matter. And so again, moving back and forth between the two, of course, as a small diaphragm condenser, I have phantom power, 48 volts here on the AT2021. Gain is set at about 1130, so considerably less than the V7X. But again, what's the tone like? Do you prefer one versus the other? And again, now that you've heard me on both microphones, which one are you listening to now? Is this the V7X or the AT2021? Check that top corner and find out. And for the final mic comparison, I have the AKG P170, another really popular instrument microphone. And I'm trying to keep all these mics in the same price range so you have kind of a very reasonable comparison. Of course, we started out with the Behringer, which was a lot less expensive. But again, I think in this price range, all of them could be options. And so as I move back and forth, keep an eye on which one I'm speaking on here. Of course, the AKG P170 is also requiring phantom power, just like the AT2021. I have the gain set at 11 o'clock, so it's even more sensitive. And so back and forth between the two, do you have a preference in tone? And finally, now that you've heard both these microphones with my voice, can you tell the difference? Is this the P170 or am I speaking on the V7X? Check out that top corner. And because a number of you are not going to be using this microphone with the built-in preamp and an audio interface, I've gone ahead and connected this up to my Universal Audio 710 to Infinity. And that's, of course, a dual preamp. There's a solid-state preamp and a tube preamp built into one unit, and I have an adjustable blend control. So right now you're listening on full solid state. And I'll go ahead and I'll move over here. I'm going to dial this up, so now I have about 75% solid state, 25% tube. So we'll start to get some saturation building in with the microphone. And I'm going to keep building it up. Now I'm sitting at about 50-50. So we're going to get a little more tube saturation. And you can see if you like the way it affects the characteristics of this microphone. And again, moving a little further, now I've gone to about 75% tube. So again, 75% tube, 25% solid state, getting a lot more saturation. And finally, full 100% tube stage here. This is the kind of tone you can get out of this microphone, just an option with a different preamp. So listening back to the recordings with the rock guitar, I felt that the 57 had a little bit thinner sound as compared to the V7X. V7X had a little more body in the low end. And so looking at the frequency response graphs, we can see that it actually bears that out. We have emphasis in the lower range. They actually appear pretty similar in the upper frequencies, so it's that overall warmth and body of the V7X that defines it against the 57. Now, listening back to the recordings of the clean blues guitar, I'm going to say that the V7X had a considerably warmer, fuller tone compared to the 57. Now, I kind of like that, but it's not about right or wrong or better or worse. It's what you're trying to achieve. Now, looking at the frequency response graph, again, it really bears that out. There's actually not a lot of difference in the upper response range. It's all about that lower warmth that the V7X introduces, and that in a way makes it sound like it has less in the high frequencies when it really doesn't. Now, listening back to the bass guitar recordings, to my ears, the V7X tone had a lot more warmth, depth, kind of a really deep low end to it, versus the 57 had a lot more punch to it. Both are great, depends what you're trying to get. Now, when we look at the frequency response graphs, again, we can see that additional response in the low range from the V7X, but again, very similar in the upper range. That really doesn't maybe line up with what we think we're hearing, but again, that energy in the low frequencies is going to make the higher frequencies that the V7X is picking up feel less dominant in the overall tone. So again, it's about choosing the microphone that's right for the sound you're trying to get. Now, because this is a handheld microphone, I thought I'd do the next few tests using my X5 U3 wireless XLR mic system. Now, you can look for a review on this coming up on the channel shortly, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Now, handling noise, there definitely is some. It's picking it up. I can hear it as I move it back and forth. Now, we'll check the polar pattern as well. It's super cardioid, so as we move to the side, it should really drop off sufficiently in terms of what it's picking up. And as I get around to the back of the microphone, now we should be getting a small lobe of sensitivity. Turning it around to the other side at 90 degrees, this is the sound we're going to get. And again, back to front on the microphone capsule. And to give you an idea of how this microphone would work with some basic processing, I've set up a plug-in chain here. First, I've inserted Isotope's vocal denoise, and the reason is I want to get rid of the computer fan in the background, just a little bit of noise floor that's sitting in the room. And it cleans it up very well. There's not a whole lot. This microphone does a good job of rejecting ambient noise. Then I have the Focusrite Red 2 EQ and Red 3 compressor. Again, these come with the Scarlett. I just chose them because they're representative of kind of what you get in a free plug-in suite with your audio interface. And finally, the SPL dual band de-esser, just to clean up any minor sibilance that might happen. As you see, it's not really reacting a whole lot, but it does get the job done. So plug-in processing chain, let's listen to hardware as well. And this is an example of the V7X with hardware processing. I'm using, again, the Universal Audio 710 to Infinity preamp here, all on the solid state mode, but I have it routed through the ART voice channel. So we have compression, EQ, de-esser, as well as an expander. And so, of course, you can set it up as you like, but this will give you an idea with an all-hardware chain. And I have a full set of specifications in the description below, but suffice to say this is a dynamic microphone that has a super cardioid pickup pattern, XLR connection with frequency response of 30 to 19,000 hertz, but of course we notice that varies considerably with proximity to the mic. Now that we've completed the test, I'm going to give you my final thoughts. First of all, the build quality in this microphone is excellent. SE Electronics, as usual, has delivered a high-quality product here. Now, in terms of the microphone comparisons, again, I thought this fit in very well with the other dynamic microphones, and we saw the difference that a condenser microphone makes in terms of the detail that can be picked up. But again, not really intended for vocal applications. We could use this with a pop filter, we could use it with a windscreen, but that's really not what SE built this for. Now, in terms of instrument applications, I think this is an excellent option. It sounds different than the 57, and that's great because we want microphones that are going to give us a variety of tone. So it was really good there. Bass amp, guitar amp, no trouble handling that. We got a nice warm, full sound with enough accuracy and detail. In terms of the shaker and the cabasa, for more of a live application, where we can't have the mic bleed from a condenser, it had enough detail for those instruments to be very usable with this. Of course, in a studio, I'd recommend using a condenser microphone to get more granular, more detail. And so overall, I wouldn't recommend this microphone necessarily for vocals, but for instruments, both live use and recording applications, this could be a great choice. And of course, if you want to look at some other microphone options, check out one of the ones on the screen.